So, for those who might not be aware of the process on how the legislative calendar is set in this place, and this is important because today we are debating a bill called the Act to Implement the Convention between Canada and the Republic of Madagascar for the Avoidance of Double Taxation and the Prevention of Fiscal Evasion with respect to taxes on income. So I want to get to the process by which the legislative calendar is set in the House of Commons so people who are watching this debate understand that the government House Leader found it proper and a great use of time to prioritize this piece of legislation in the House today. So my objection to the bill is related to the objection to the fact that it has been prioritized. This particular bill, a tax avoidance with Madagascar bill, has been prioritized for debate in the House of Commons today when arguably the House is on fire. This is kind of like the house is on fire and the government is choosing to water the rose bushes outside situation. So let's recap the week here. We are debating the implementation of the Convention between Canada and the Republic of Madagascar for avoidance of double taxation after a convoy of trucks of out-of-work Western Canadian energy sector workers had to drive to Ottawa to talk about the fact that we don't have a pipeline built after the Prime Minister spent billions of dollars for buying something that the private sector was going to build but then decided not to after he put in place legislation that has completely bankrupted the investment climate in Canada. Maybe, Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, we could be debating that. Maybe we could be talking about getting energy sector workers back to work and the ridiculously poor investment climate for energy investment in Canada. I don't know. I mean, that sounds important. Oh, but I don't think the Prime Minister wanted to meet with any of those people, Mr. Chair. But no, we're talking about today the Canada-Madagascar Avoidance of Double Taxation Act. That seems about on the same par of importance, or we could talk about the fact, Mr. Speaker, that we just found out this week that wait times for hearing refugee claims after the Prime Minister has allowed 40,000 people to illegally cross the border from upstate New York, the haven of persecution that is upstate New York, to claim asylum in Canada, that the wait time to hear whether or not their claims are valid, they're coming from upstate New York, has ballooned past 2 years, is on track to be 5 years. They've spent over $1 billion to give hotel rooms and social welfare payments to people from upstate New York. Maybe we could talk about, no, we've got here today the Convention between Canada and the Republic of Madagascar for the Avoidance of Double Taxation. What? Like, okay, those are two things we could have talked about, Mr. Speaker. I'm happy to talk about those things. I think they're important. They're certainly important to my constituents. I'll tell you one thing that my constituents have not emailed me about, called me about, or I've heard on the doors and any of the ridings that I've door knocked in. I have not heard one thing about the Convention between Canada and the Republic of Madagascar for the Avoidance of Double Taxation. I could be surprised. Maybe this is a burning issue to a riding that went from single-digit natural rate of unemployment to one of the highest unemployment rates in the country because of this government's failed policies that have been punitive to the energy sector, and they phone me talking about the fact that they might have to move out of Alberta, their house is up for foreclosure, they're out of credit card room. Can't you do something about my job? No. Maybe they want me to talk about the Convention between Canada and the Republic of Madagascar for the avoidance of... Come on! What's going on in this place? Seriously, how did this even make the legislative agenda, given the government tabled a, 8 billion page omnibus budget bill? They stuck in there a conveniently snuck in deferred prosecution agreement that maybe, we should have debated at the Justice Committee. They stuck that in there. Nope. We have to have a whole day of debate on the Convention between Canada and the Republic of Madagascar for the avoidance of double tax. Why, Mr. Speaker, would the government want to spend a whole day of debate on the...
As a point of order?
I question the relevance of the member's speech. The only reference to the bill has been the member reading its title.
That's true. Okay, I'll let the honourable member for Calgary Nose Hill continue. Actually, based on what I've heard today, she's probably the most relevant one of anybody who's spoken. The honourable member.
You know, Mr. Chair, I understand. I understand my colleague opposite, because lately the Liberals have been doing their very best to silence strong women that don't agree with their position. I won't stand for that. So I'm quite pleased to continue my speech on the fact that the government has prioritized, while the borders are not secured, Alberta energy sector and energy sector workers across the country have no jobs. They have prioritized the Convention between Canada and the Republic of Madagascar for the avoidance of double taxation, the prevention of fiscal evasion, after they tabled an omnibus budget bill that contained virtually every topic under the sun, including a deferred prosecution agreement, which is now the subject of a major scandal in the Prime Minister's office, that today we spend a whole day of debate talking about the Canada and Republic of Madagascar avoidance for double taxation bill. Now, perhaps we could have talked today about the fact that Canada still has ridiculously punitive tariffs on it from the United States of America. I would have loved to have talked about perhaps some sort of government response or legislative framework or strategy to deal with these tariffs that the government has done nothing to do, that is damaging the Canadian economy, that auto sector workers, that union workers across the country are saying, hey, maybe you guys could do something about that. Well, we could have talked about that, but no, we're talking about the Convention between Canada and the Republic of Madagascar for the avoidance of debt. We're sure as heck, Mr. Speaker, not talking about the fact that the Prime Minister is embroiled in an alleged scandal where he allegedly exerted political influence to influence the outcome of a criminal corruption case involving allegations of bribery of a Libyan official. Like, maybe we could talk about that. Maybe we could talk about the fact that the clerk of the Privy Council is in the Justice Committee right now giving the most partisan political speech I have ever heard out of a public servant in my life as an attempt to deflect from the... Maybe we could talk about that. We could have had a public inquiry. We could have had a whole day of discussion to deal with the fact that there are serious allegations of obstruction of justice, of interference in our judicial system in Canada. We could have talked about that, but no. We're talking about the Convention between Canada and the Republic of Madagascar for the avoidance of double taxation and the prevention of fiscal... Come on! Where are these government's priorities? Canada is watching this. The investors, workers, everyone is looking at our country now and going, who's in charge? What's going on? This government needs to get its act together. This government needs to start putting some stuff forward that is actually going to benefit Canada and get us out of the mess that they've created. Hear, hear. But instead, we're talking about the Convention between Canada and the Republic of Madagascar on the avoidance of double taxation. I'm tired of this. This is a joke. At this point in time, this government needs to go. Nothing's getting done because they're so busy trying to figure out how to avoid public prosecution and public inquiries. How many ongoing inquiries are there involving cabinet ministers now? We had the clam scam. We had all of this stuff happening with the Norman case. The Aga Khan Island. You know, I will say something, Mr. Speaker. As Madagascar has a special place in many Canadians' hearts, it's a lovely... outside of a lovely country, there's a lovely film about it. So in that spirit, I'd like to move it, and I move, seconded by the member for
Red Deer
Lacombe, that the motion be amended by deleting all the words after the word that and substituting the following. Bill S6, an act to implement the Convention between Canada and the Republic of Madagascar for the avoidance of double taxation and the prevention of fiscal evasion with respect to taxes on incomes, be now read a second time, but that the order be discharged, the bill withdrawn, and the subject matter thereof referred to the Standing Committee on Finance. Let's get this act together and get some accountability from this government, Mr. Speaker.